Hello and welcome to Stormwind Castle, temporarily housed in Universal Studios, California. Now, before we get started, could you do me just one quick favour and think of any big Hollywood blockbuster? What's the one thing they've all got in common? That's right, they are absolutely chock full of the very best special effects. And these were all made by one team, Industrial Light and Magic. For their latest, Warcraft: The Beginning, they're taking one of the biggest ever massively multiplayer online role-playing games ever, World of Warcraft, and turning it into a movie. They've got to mix real live-action footage, props and all, with entirely CGI motion-captured orcs. Then there's the weapons. The hair, the jewellery, the battles, the magic, and even the hippogriffs. That's right, the hippogriffs. You could say, and I do, that Warcraft: The Beginning is ILM's biggest challenge yet.
Shots could take days, they could take weeks, and in many cases they could take months.
We'll speak to director Duncan Jones about how he brought World of Warcraft to life in cinemas and how we created those CGI hippogriffs I keep banging on about.
You're making me ruin movie magic with these answers.
We'll be asking the actors what it's like to work in motion capture suits, or as I like to call them, pajamas.
Trying to become that fearsome with those PJs, because honestly they're a little ridiculous. I'm not gonna lie to you.
And we'll go on a journey through the history of visual effects with Industrial Light and Magic as they tell us the secrets of how they created Warcraft: The Beginning. This is Industrial Light and Magic's home in San Francisco, and it's here where all of the special effects for Warcraft: The Beginning were made. This is where the magic happens, literally. ILM was founded in 1975 by George Lucas to bring Star Wars to life. And in the 4 decades since, it's pioneered groundbreaking special effects and created the iconic visuals in so many of your favourite movies. One of the reasons why Warcraft: The Beginning was such an epic undertaking for the team here at ILM was the sheer size and popularity of the game itself. But if you don't know your orcs from your elbow, allow Radio 1's gaming guru, Julia Hardy, to give you a quick rundown of its gaming legacy.
Here are my 10 things you need to know about Warcraft. So, number 1. The original game came out in 1994 and was called Warcraft: Orcs and Humans. Number 2. There's been 12 Warcraft-esque games, but you know what? It really didn't start to gain popularity until 2004's World of Warcraft was released. Number 3. It's an MMORPG. Number 4. An MMORPG is a massively multiplayer online role-play game, which means you go online and you play with other people, but you don't play as yourself. That's the role-play bit. Number 5. At its peak, it had 12.2 million subscribers and even won a Guinness World Record for that. Number 6. Over the history of World of Warcraft, it has had over 100 million accounts created. Number 7. When you sign up to play, you start by choosing what race of character you'd like to be. A troll, a dwarf, a blood elf, or even a human, which, incidentally, the most played character race. Number 8. In the game, you can use a series of emotes. So you're playing with some friends, you want to let them know how you're feeling. Shake that. Number 9, there are actually some celebrities that play World of Warcraft, would you believe? One of which is Mila Kunis.
World of Warcraft. I'm dying to know what they do with that movie.
And even weirder, Vin Diesel.
What level are you in World of Warcraft?
Oh, I'm deadly.
I just can't see Vin Diesel having the patience. Number 10, Warcraft, the film, takes us all the way back to the beginning of Warcraft lore. I mean, to really explain everything that's happened is kind of like trying to explain the entire plot of EastEnders to someone. It's just not going to happen.
There was a knowledge of how big the game was and how big the fan base was, but there was also a knowledge that we had to make a film that people who had no idea about the game were happy and willing to come and see 1 and 2 and 3 times, become a classic for them.
The game it's 2 decades old, and it's very stylized in its look and feel, and there's kind of an iconic design to the World of Warcraft universe.
I saw the brilliance of it when you had really huge fans that had just lived through this game for years and years come onto our sets and see they were identical to how they were perceived in the game.
You know, there are changes that we've made. There are subtle differences, like Garona being half human instead of half Draenei, which is slightly just like perturbing, but it makes for a better film.
When we started working on this project, I had done a rewrite of the script, and there was a pretty dramatic change of emphasis from humans being the good guys to the creatures, the orcs, being the bad guys. What I wanted to do was to spend a lot more time with the orcs and humanize them. And in order to do that, I was going to have to hold a close-up on an orc. Bill Westenhofer, who was my VFX supervisor, and I talked about only a few companies in the world that could do that kind of work. Obviously Weta, which has wonderful experience doing Gollum and Caesar from the Planet of the Apes movies, and also ILM, who had just come off the back of doing The Incredible Hulk in the first Avengers movie.
There's obviously a lot of similarities between the Hulk and, one of our group of hero protagonists, the orcs in this movie. The orcs were our biggest challenge, creating as real as human digital actors that could interact, act, and perform believably on the screen.
So how do you turn a human actor into a fully formed digital character? The answer is a technique called motion or performance capture.
The physical movements of an actor, both their body and their face, can be captured and digitally set onto a matrix, and that matrix can be used to drive a computer-generated character.
To do that, we need to capture them on set, and we often do that with a suit with tracking markers on it. In addition to that, we also have head-mounted rigs. These are cameras that are mounted just in front of the face, pointing directly from either side of the actor, and from that we're able to reinterpret their facial performance.
They need every piece of detail they can get, so they're now doing 162 dots in total. They're then placing the skin and spending endless, tireless hours making the environment affect the hair, making the environment affect the skin, the heat, the temperature, all of those things. So that amount of work that goes in, they're man hours, that's like handmade performance.
Is it a teleprompter?
No, it's called a memory.
Yeah.
Jesus, it was great. That was good stuff.
I think the ultimate goal is if the actors can see themselves on the screen in their digital performance and they believe it's their performance coming through, then we've got the right amount of detail, we've got the right amount of nuance, and we've achieved our goal.
Of course, playing an orc isn't as simple as just putting on a performance capture suit. You also have to move and act like an orc. And that's not as simple as you might think.
When you're working with the guys doing the mocap acting, there is a whole routine. We had an amazing sort of movement coach, a guy called Terry Notary, who'd worked on the Planet of the Apes movie, who came up with a vocabulary of movement for the orcs, and he took them to orc school.
Orc school was awesome. It was the best school I've ever actually been to. It was the only school I've never been expelled from.
Did you pass?
I did pass. Well, you'll tell me when you've seen the movie. But yeah, Orc School was a month-long process of, every single day, like 10 to 12 hours a day, of going in there and familiarizing ourselves with how motion capture would apply to us.
How do you move like an orc? How do you have that sense of weight? How far would their heads turn? Because obviously they have these huge, massive, thick necks. You can't do that when you're an orc. You kind of, the shoulders and everything have to move with it.
Gul'dan must be stopped.
Duratan had a very upright way of looking around. He was a much more intelligent character. He never bowed his head, but Orgrim was always looking out from his brows because he was aggressive and he was angry.
We are not powerful enough to defeat Gul'dan.
Then you start kind of going back to bases of character and motivation and what the characters are doing. But it all has to be spoken through this new language.
But with the humans' help, we could be.
It's not just the orcs' facial expressions and schooling that sets Warcraft apart. It's also in their hair. Head hair, facial hair, back hair, the orcs and the massive wolves they ride have got it all, forcing ILM to create a whole new piece of software to untangle this knotty problem. The aptly named
Haircraft was designed especially for Warcraft, so it gave us the flexibility to get a lot of different things out of the box, such as braids, hairstyles, eyebrows, costume fur. When I look at a hairstyle, for example, like on Durotans, there are probably several 100,000 of strands here to make up his hairstyle alone. Never mind the body fur, never mind the costume fur.
And they have to move as he moves.
Yeah, they have to move as he moves, and that's achieved through simulation. And it really sells the hair as being photoreal. So we have King Magni, and this is a great example of what we can achieve with Haircraft.
So you've pressed a button that says
That
braids.
says make a braid.
What is it? The boom stick.
So we see the pieces here that were later painted by texture painters But we see as the character progresses, more and more pieces of the puzzle coming together. Now we have the later renders, so there's some color variation. We're seeing a lot of flyaways, a lot of strays around the face. A really nice final product. So we see here the close-up on the eyebrows, the eyelashes.
This genuinely feels like a level of detail I've not seen before.
Yeah, I agree.
And do you feel that Warcraft earns this level of detail because it has such a loyal fan base that will care for this?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. It's a loyal fan base, but also on our end, really wanting to create a phenomenal work. Yeah.
So you've got this 2D file here. How is that put on to the actor's performance?
So what you see here is what we call the rest pose. But then the next huge step is animation, some of it via mocap. They are being lit afterwards. We need the flesh, we need the muscles, and we need the long hair, the braids to move. So it is at that stage that all these disciplines come into play to get us something that is realistic.
And also totally made up.
Well, it's CGI, it is totally made up, yes.
We've banged on about the orcs enough now. What about the humans and the half-orcs that have to actually fight these hulking brutes in mocap gym jams?
Trying to become that orc and being that fearsome with those PJs, because honestly they're a little ridiculous. I'm not gonna lie to you. You had to kind of just conceal the laughter and then you just move forward.
I was actually acting opposite the actors who were in the mocap suits. There was part of me that thought I was just going to be in a green box having to talk to tennis balls or marks on the wall, but that wasn't the case at all. There's a monitor in the corner which lays over the image that it will become, so you can understand the scale of your character in comparison.
Oftentimes when we have an oversized computer-generated character interacting with a real-life actor, there are certain shots where orcs are picking up humans, and so we would often use stand-ins. These foam hands would be 3-4 times the size of a normal human's hand.
In a battle scene, of course, many of the orc characters are put in post-production.
A lot of it comes down to great choreography, the stunt coordinators, and the actors themselves. They're the ones that really bring a lot of the believability to the performance.
You'd then have the stunt guys who would also be there, also in grey suits, also being picked up by the motion capture sensors. It was all actually happening.
We will often take that performance and augment it. If we want an action to be slightly faster or have a bit more weight, these actors can hit each other. They have, oftentimes the props they use are covered in foam to protect them, which is fair enough.
It's important that during a fight sequence, there's something there that has the ability to make contact and that you can strike and not have your face chopped off.
We had a black stick with sparkly lights on it and balls. We never got hammer. I actually went to Kamikaze last year and I bought myself one from a fan shop.
With or without props, the human actors have to pull off stunts on screen that in real life would have the studio's insurance department tearing their perfectly braided hair out. But don't panic, ILM have got that covered too. Can we just drill down a little bit on one of my favourite parts of the film, which is the hippogriffs? Lothar.
Hippogriffs, that's very classic of you.
Isn't it though?
You mean griffins?
Yeah, quite
griffins.
Seriously, how is a stunt like this done? Because I think griffins aren't real.
Travis Fimmel, who plays Lothar, goes running across the room, grabs a sword, runs up a staircase, runs off a balcony and jumps into the air to be picked up by his horse, his griffin. All of the running, all the jumping, all of that happened in the physical set that we'd built.
It's fun, you're like a little kid jumping out on the mats. And then it's amazing to see when suddenly there's a griffin under you.
The only bit where it obviously goes off into virtual land is when he jumps off the ledge and he lands on his horse, Griffin.
But is that like a blue bucking bronco?
No. You're making me ruin movie magic with these answers.
I don't know how they do it. It's like the people that invented cell phones and that. Who knows? I'm just glad there's really smart people
It's
out
like
there
Wi-Fi. How does that work?
You'll
never know.
Yeah,
isn't that just like magic?
For us to carry that action through and have, Lothar in the movie jump off the ledge, fall down 70 feet and get swept up by his griffin, we had to create a digital stunt, Travis.
So he leapt about basically like a 30-foot bungee jump. Halfway through that jump, we take away the photoreal aspect and turn it into what is called a virtual stuntman, and that's what lands on the horse.
Wow.
Griffin.
Okay.
The horse griffin.
Motion and falling in CGI is a big challenge. If you get it wrong, it can look pretty bad. So how do ILM ensure the fantastical looks real?
I think there's a fundamental in animation and study, and everything we do in special effects is based off observation. At ILM, we have actor performance rooms where many of the animators will go in, act out the performances, film themselves doing it, and then use that for reference.
Having something physical for actors to work with is a really important part of CGI's magic spell, helping ILM in the post-production process, as well as giving the actors something, you know, to act with.
We would have lights and like electrodes rigged up to us to give a lighting effect in real time, so that in
didn't know that.
post, so that in post they're working off of actual light reflecting off surfaces, and then they fill in all the craziness.
So it is about a mixture of the practical.
Of the practical and the CG.
The less set, the less wardrobe, the less physical manifestation or what you want the film to look like there is, the more difficult it is for the actor.
Even just the suggestion of what you may be carrying through to completion in visual effects is huge. It gives the actors something to react to. Light especially is an interactive property. So when you have explosions or spells,
I'd say about 40% of what we were working with was practical, and it was real, it was tactile, you could see it, touch it. And then the other 60, it's, you know, you're taking a leap of faith.
I would find it very, very challenging to not have those accessories.
The accessories.
Yeah, I'm a girl, you know, I need accessories, what can I tell you?
ILM's work on Warcraft shows what can be done when you mix brand new technology with tried and true old school techniques. The company has been pushing boundaries since they first started over 40 years ago, a pioneering spirit exemplified by its founder.
George Lucas was a huge innovator throughout the history of visual effects, motion control cameras, utilizing those as an integrated part of the work we do. You know, he pushed for digital editing. Star Wars Episode 1 was one of the first movies to be shot entirely digitally.
ILM have got the technology that they figured out so well when solid things collide. 2 helicopters crashing, Iron Man smashing another car. They've got it to the point now where the information is fed into the computer of their trajectory. They collide, and then the computer figures out what would occur to the solid masses afterwards. So they've got it to that level. That's ILM's abilities.
The iMocap system that ILM developed was a huge milestone in being able to capture performance on set with the actors. Pirates of the Caribbean was the first to fully utilize that system.
With all these advances, when you can do things like this, are there any limits left when it comes to blockbuster filmmaking?
I don't think there was ever a limitation on as far as technology, as far as what we were able to achieve.
Now there's a thing to say.
Well, it's true. I think James Cameron would have probably said the same thing when he did Avatar. The limitation is more about time and money.
The things that are the hardest to do, for me, is digital humans. Amazing groundwork has been done in those areas on projects, but I still think there's a ways to go before you can put a digital human character side by side on the screen for a whole movie and have no one question the origin of that performance.
Well, let's fast forward to the increasingly possible world where Dominic Cooper, actor, gets scanned and you can be created through the magic of CGI and ILM, and they could make a you. Does that world excite you or scare you? How does it feel?
I don't know whether that's terrifying or great. I can't really work it out. It probably won't fit together. You'll have this kind of old, angry attitude, but it looks more youthful. It might not, but I hear people are doing it, paying to get themselves scanned so that they can play parts in the future that they will not be able to play.
Is that the frontier right now for CGI? How close are we to that?
To having a Final Fantasy that looks real?
Well, yeah, to have humans in a movie like Final Fantasy that's entirely created with, quote-unquote,
I think
real humans.
I believe we're on the cusp.
I mean, it's going to happen. I mean, it is going to happen. There's... Yeah, I think it probably is more terrifying than it is exciting, though.
Movies have done it in interpretive ways, but I feel we're on the cusp of seeing fully digital characters that you wouldn't know are digital on the big screen.
That's kind of awesome and a bit scary at the same time.
I think it'll be a couple of years, but you might not know.
It's a scary and amazing world where the limits of a director's imagination are the limits of what can be seen on screen. And with photorealistic humans just around the corner, we are standing on the edge of CGI looking as good as, well, this.